ओवर बेक मत करो। Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear my voice? All right, we'll just start in 2 minutes. So I'll be taking a brief class today. I'll be discussing the 2018 NEET paper, the ortho questions which have come from there. I'll be discussing it briefly today. From tomorrow onwards, the discussion will be a little detailed. The explanation part also I will take today because I'm going to be revising whatever I have thought before. That's why the question paper part will be a little less today. All right, so I want you all to be active in this and answer whenever given. So let's just solve the first question. All right. So which of these is not an absolute indication to mount orthodontic study models on an articulator? The question is asking that which of the following is not an indication at all, and that one absolute indication where you do not have to place at all. First one would be to record the excursive movements of the mandible. Anywhere where you're relating the mandible to the maxilla, you have to articulate that. Whenever you want to see the relation between maxilla and mandible, you have to articulate the cast. So the A cannot be the option. In surgical planning, obviously you perform mock surgeries after mounting the cast onto the articulator. So in surgical planning also, you will require an articulator. You cannot hold the cast in air and decide your treatment planning. Next is class 2 case with severe overjet of 14 millimeters. Now in this case, it is just telling you that a class 2 case is there with overjet of 14 millimeters. You don't really require to articulate this case. You can just occlude it with a bite registration. You don't have to mount the cast on an articulator unless after bite registration, later on, you're going to fabricate a twin block appliance. Till then, there is no need just for a class 2 case for you to mount it on an articulator. Fourth option is to see and correct CR-CO discrepancy, that is centric relation and centric occlusion discrepancy. For this, you have to mount it on an articulator. So the answer has to be C. Class 2 with severe overjet of 14 millimeters. All the other three are absolute indications of articulating your cast. Now the next is, which is the most favorable for reinforcement of anchorage? Now I want you guys to answer this question and I will tell my answer as well. Type in the chat box, which of the following is the most favorable for reinforcement of anchorage? Is it conical roots? Is it shifting center of the resistance apically? Tooth out of occlusion? Tooth with intact proximal contacts? Come on, everybody else, you need to participate. Even if it's a wrong answer, this is like a discussion we are having every day. Choose for the 166th bit. Yeah, it is D. See, conical roots are not reinforcement for anchorage. It is not going to increase your anchorage. Roots which are triangular in shape or which are flat, they can resist anchorage better, or dilacerated roots. Conical roots is not going to reinforce your anchorage. Neither is shifting of your center of resistance apically or tooth out of occlusion. Why will that have any reinforcement? When the tooth has intact proximal contacts or tight contacts, it is better for reinforcement of anchorage. It will resist anchor loss more than the other teeth. Now the 167th bit is very easy. When force is applied through the center of resistance of the tooth, which of the following occurs? Obviously translation occurs when you are going to pass your force through the center of resistance of the tooth. That I'm not going to waste time on that. Now, which is the best method to retain a corrected maxillary canine rotation? Guys, start answering. 168. Yeah, it is circumferential supracrestal fibrotomy or perisession that has to be done in cases of rotated teeth in general. That is what you do to retain the correction, because the alveolar crestal fibers and all of that take a lot of time for reorganization. So let's not waste time on simple bits. Wait a second, I can't see the chat box. Yeah. Can you guys see the next question? Model diagnostic setup for planning clear aligners in 1945 was given by whom? So basically anything they ask you about a Kessling setup or a diagnostic setup where you cut the teeth and you place it in the wax to see how it is going to be if you extract the teeth or if you don't extract, how the arch form is going to be. That is called as a diagnostic setup or a Kessling setup. This was foreseen by Kessling. Okay. Invisalign was not invented by Kessling. It was started by Zia Chishti and Kelsey Worth. I'm just going to type it in this box. Correct, it is these both. These are the two people who had started Invisalign, the Align Tech technology, but diagnostic setup for planning clear aligners, yeah, whatever, clear retainers, whatever was done by Kessling. Don't get confused. What is the best time to modify growth? Start answering quickly. Yeah, so because your late mixed dentition period kind of, what do you say, it overlaps with your pubertal growth spurt. So most of the class 2 corrections you're going to do in the pubertal growth spurt, around 11 to 13 for females and roughly around 12 to 14 for males. Females will have the pubertal growth spurt earlier. In those cases, you will give the myofunctional appliances to advance the mandible. You can do it in this phase. Now, in which phase are you going to correct the maxilla? What is the approximate age where you're going to advance the maxilla? Advance the maxilla in class 3 cases, maxillary hypoplasia, where you have to give a face mask or a reverse pull headgear. What is the age group you're going to give this in? Tell me the number. For maxillary protraction, you will give after 18-20. Do you know cephalocaudal gradient of growth? Use your common sense, everybody. When I'm asking that you can grow the mandible around 11 to 13, maxilla will obviously end its growth before, right? Cephalocaudally, if you see the gradient of growth, maxilla will stop its growth first. So if you have to advance in the growing age, you have to use a face mask. You have to do it before pubertal growth spurt, right? Before the mandible growth spurt. It has to be around 8 to 10 years. 8 to 9 years is the average. Around 8 to 9 years, you will try to get the maxilla in front. You're going to give RME appliance. You're going to loosen the sutures, and then you're going to use a face mask to advance the maxilla. Advancement of maxilla is done in this age group. If you have to stop the growth of the maxilla, that can be done around 11, 12 years using a headgear. You're going to take support from the skull and try to push the maxilla back or hold the growth at least till the time the mandible can catch up. So if you have to advance the mandible, 8 to 9 years. Just type it down and note these points down. Not Leaford surgery. We are not doing anything. No, no, we are advancing the mandible with a face mask in the growing age. I'm not saying a severe class 3 condition, a minor class 3 condition where there is just crossbite and you have to get the maxilla in front. You use a face mask, right? Yes, face mask is also called as reversible headgear. Yes, Leaford you will do later on when the growth is over. In the growing age, you do not obviously perform orthognathic surgeries, right? If it is severe or if the patient did not come to you at the growing age and you have to correct the crossbite later on, if the maxilla is retrognathic, that time you will perform Leaford one and get the maxilla in front. You can use a face mask in the growing age, right? Is this concept clear? 3 points. Getting the mandible in front, best ages, late mixed dentition or around 11 to 14 years. All right. If you have to get the maxilla in front, 8 to 9 years with a face mask or a reversible headgear. Now, when you have to stop the maxillary growth in prognathic cases, in protrusion cases, you will take support from the occipital parietal region and use a headgear to stop the growth of the maxilla. That you can do around 11 to 13 years of age, 11 to 12 like that. Understood? Remember these 3 points: mandible advancement, maxilla advancement, and maxilla stopping. If you have to stop the growth of the mandible, you can use chin cup in this 11 to 13 years of age, but you have to continue using till 16 to 18 years almost, because mandible continues to grow, especially in men. Even till 18 or after 18 also the mandible will grow. So chin cup cannot stop mandibular growth. It will just redirect the mandibular growth. There is no appliance in this world which can stop your mandibular growth till now. Remember that chin cup can only stop to a certain extent. It will just rotate your mandible down, or the mandible will start growing from behind in the fossa. You cannot just stop mandibular growth. All right. Nasal bones will finish growth earlier. Whatever structures are present on the top will finish growth before this. But your nasal cartilage will grow later on, not bone as such, but your nose will have a nasal spurt in boys. In females, it will stop around 11 years or something, 11, 12 years. In males, you will have a growth spurt around 12 to 14 years of age. When can we advance the mandible? In pubertal growth spurt, in late mixed dentition period. Females till 13 years you can advance. And if little growth is left, residual growth is there, you can use fixed functional. Whatever I'm typing, these are very important conceptual points. When are FFA used, fixed functional appliances? So you can give myofunctional if lot of growth is there in late mixed dentition. Now the patient came to you at the end of the growth spurt. What will you do? You have to utilize maximum, right? So you will give something which is attached to your maxilla to your mandible, fixed functional, upper molar to lower canine region. You give a fixed functional so that the patient cannot remove the appliance. It is constantly acting throughout the day. It will act. So in residual growth, late adolescents, you will give these fixed function appliances. Do not forget this. Now, W arch is used for treatment of what? Quickly answer. Where is the chat? W arch is used for what? You all know, right? W arch looks like what? This is how W arch looks. It's also called as Porter's appliance, right? This is given cases where you have posterior crossbutt and you need transverse expansion. I've already talked about this before in a lot of discussions. Okay, coming to 172, a 12-year-old patient comes with retained primary mandibular second molar and radiograph shows congenitally missing second premolar. It is very commonly missing also, this tooth. So what would be your most conservative approach? Extraction of second molar and allowing the rest of the teeth to migrate into its position. Very difficult. Extraction of second molar and transplantation of third molar in its place. Extraction of second molar and giving a bridge. Retain the second molar with minimum proximal contact stripping. What is the most conservative approach? Obviously, I mean, if it's asking for conservative, you can't go for extraction, right? Conservative means you will try to retain the tooth and you will perform proximal stripping so that the other teeth will slightly come forward. Because the mandibular second molar size will be more than the premolar, right? Obviously, it was big. That's why you get the leeway space. Primary mandibular second molar is wider than your permanent mandibular second premolar. Is it? So that is why you will do some stripping and you will reduce the size so that it is almost in the size of a permanent mandibular second premolar. Understood the point? Because there is a difference in the width of primary molars and your permanent premolars, that is why you get the leeway space. Did you guys understand this point? If it is not a conservative approach, then you can try getting your second molar. No, it's a premolar, right? You can't even migrate it. You have to see the case. So why would you want to extract a primary mandibular second molar and transplant a third molar in its place? You can give an implant in that position. You can reduce the space and you can give an implant, or you can protract all the molars in front. You have to see the case and decide. If it's a class 2 case, class 3 case, class 1 case, depending on that, you have to take a call. Which is the next one? I can't see the top screen. Okay. Diagnostic. Wait, you guys can't hear me. What is 173? What is a diagnostic aid used for measuring transverse discrepancy and vertical facial dimensions? Guys, seriously, what does transverse mean? Transverse is this, not from the side. Side mein you will see sagittal relationships. A lateral ceph will show you sagittal relationships, not transverse. Anything to do with transverse, asymmetry, it will be a PSF. Asymmetry, this has come in your previous NEET for your seniors only. Asymmetry ke vaste what you will use? A PSF. You can see the vertical facial dimensions. You can see the transverse discrepancy. Which side of the face is bigger? Which side of the face is smaller? All of that you can see. If they're talking about lengths, if they're talking about sagittal relationships, that is if mandible is in front, maxilla is at back, for those cases, you will use a lateral ceph. All right. Understood? If you want to see if it's a class 2, class 3, class 1 case, you'll take a lateral ceph because you can see which jaw is in front, which jaw is in back. You can see that from the side. When you're seeing from the front, you can see the transverse dimensions, vertical facial dimensions. That you can assess better with a lateral ceph. Understood? You can unmute and tell also if you've understood or not. This is like a classroom. You don't have to type everything. Okay. So the next question is very easy. I am not wasting time. You know what is a CATS classification, right? It is based on what? It's based on premolar, not canine. Cat's classification is based on premolar. Remember that very important bit, very important bit. Which classification is based on incisor? Incisor classification? I think Ballard and Wayman also, and the British Institute thing is there now. Let me just check. British Standards Institute had adopted the incisor classification. Class 1, class 2, class 3. Yeah, remember this. So next is, according to which theory, thumb sucking habit is due to deep emotional influences? Palermo theory, Freudian theory, operant conditioning, classic conditioning. Where is the deep emotional influence mentally when the child is affected? What is the Freudian theory or Freudian? What is the name? Pedo mein you've read. Sigmund Freud gave what theory? Come on, type quick. What is the theory's name? Those are the three things of the theory, but yeah, psychoanalytical psychosexual theory. It's an example for a psychodynamic theory. Yes, 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 psychosexual theory. ID, ego, superego are the components. In that also subconscious, conscious, unconscious mind is also there. The iceberg phenomenon. Anyways, now next. Plane of reference which is used in transverse direction in Witt's analysis. Frankfurt plane, Sella-Nazion plane, functional occlusal plane, or palatal plane. You guys know, right? What is Witt's analysis? You will draw an occlusal plane. From point A, you will drop a line. From point B, you will drop a perpendicular to the occlusal plane. And the distance between AO and BO, you will measure. What is the normal value of Witt's analysis in girls and in boys? Tell me quick. Normal value for Witt's analysis in males and females. AO, BO should coincide in which? And it is -1 in what? Yeah, BO will be 1 mm ahead of AO. In whom? For girls and boys, what it is? Tell me. Type quickly. Do yes, AO BO coincides in boys and in girls, and in boys AO will be 1 mm behind or BO will be 1 mm ahead. So it will be -1. You can remember that guys sometimes have strong jaws, right? Their jawline, everything will be big. They have strong mandibles. So that's why BO will be ahead. BO is the point of mandible, right? BO, the concavity here. From here, you will drop a point to the occlusal plane, BO point. So AO, BO will coincide in girls, and it is -1, or BO will be 1 mm ahead of AO in boys. You guys know what I'm talking, right? You guys know this, right? Can you see from point A, we have dropped a point on the functional occlusal plane. That dot is called as AO. From B, you will drop a perpendicular to the functional occlusal plane. That point is called as BO. The distance between these both will be your Witt's analysis. So AO, BO will coincide in girls and BO will be 1 mm ahead in boys. So that is -1, negative value. Now this is also very easy. Tanaka-Johnson analysis uses width of which teeth to estimate the width of maxillary canine and premolars. Majority, what are mixed dentition analysis? What are they trying to predict? They're trying to predict the size of your permanent canines and premolars, right? What is mixed dentition? Mixed dentition mainly means your incisors have erupted, your first molar has erupted. Now the teeth between these two sets are sandwiched, right? They are not erupted yet. Canines and your primary molars. They have to exfoliate, then your permanent teeth are going to come. So you have to estimate whether this space is enough or not. You have to gain space, you have to extract the teeth, you have to perform serial extraction or do proximal stripping. You're predicting the future with mixed dentition analysis. So in Tennecker Johnson, what are you going to use to predict that? Mandibular incisors. Great. Next is, which of these is most promising soft tissue investigation? Is it poor man's cephalometry? It is barium meal, stereophotogrammetry, or TC scan? 178 bit. The question is not which of the following is a soft tissue investigation, which is the most promising soft tissue investigation. It is one of the advancements in orthodontics.
Most promising soft tissue investigation.
No, it's not a TC scan. Can you guys see this? We take a facial scan like this. This is called as stereophotogrammetry. We take the scan of your face. See this cute boy who has a cleft. It's a 3D scan. You scan your entire face so you can mark the points directly. It's a 3D visualization. You can assess everything in that. What is poor man's cephalometry? It is a very important bit. It can come for an exam also. Poor man's cephalometry. It's given in profit. It's a direct bit. Now, in cases who come to you clinically and you have to decide if it's class 1, class 2, class 3, whatever, you'll ask the patient to stand sideways. And from the side, you will evaluate where is the problem. If it's the mandible is in front or the maxilla, I mean, the mandible is in front, maxilla is back, whatever, you can assess from the side clinically. That is called as poor man's cephalometry. Because you're not using a radiograph. Directly from there, you're clinically, you're analyzing it. So it is like a term, poor man's cephalometry, as in you don't require a cephalogram for this analysis. For example, if a poor man will not afford a cephalogram, you will diagnose them clinically. It is just a term, but clinically diagnosing the sagittal relationship is known as poor man's cephalometry. Yes. Dr. Kavali, yes. Do you have a doubt? You can unmute and ask also. I think I have kept it in some of the slides. Basically, a patient comes to you, to your orthodontic department, all right? And you have to assess which jaw is at fault. Is it the maxilla or the mandible? Which one is front or back? Usually what do you do to assess this? You will take a cephalogram, right? To be accurate, which one is at fault? Now, to instantly tell the patient something, what is the problem, or to diagnose clinically quickly, you will ask the patient to stand sideways, all right? Once he stands sideways, you can see with experience, you need to be trained in this. A trained people can only do this. So if you're trained enough, you can see facially which one can be at fault. Clinically, you're diagnosing if the mandible is back or maxilla is in front, whatever. So clinical diagnosis of a sagittal relationship, when you see from the side, is called as poor man's cephalometry. In this, you do not require a cephalogram. Clinically, you're diagnosing the patient. All right. I will send the screenshot from Profit also if we don't have in the seminar. Yes, I mean, kind of, you can say. VTO can also be seen with that, but in VTO, you're asking the patient to get the lower jaw in front. That is also a clinical thing, visual treatment objective, but there is another VTO which you will do on the CEPH. But this for functional appliances, VTO will be done clinically. You will ask the patient to get the lower jaw in front, and if the profile improves, you will call it as a positive VTO. If the profile is worsening, it's a negative VTO and you won't perform myofunctional appliance therapy in those cases. So I've done one paper today. Tomorrow I'll compile other papers with explanations and we'll go through that quickly. Now we had a revision class last time. I'm going to breeze through this so that I don't waste your time of studying and all. So we'll just see quickly what all you have to focus. I'm going to tell. If you have a pen paper beside, keep noting it down. This I will anyways, I've sent in the group. This is very frequently asked question. The shape of your head or face. The cephalic index or facial index was given by whom? Martin and Saller. Don't forget this name. These two names you cannot forget for cephalic index or facial index. Now cephalic index is reverse of facial index. Okay, in cephalic index, your width of your skull is your numerator. Length of the skull will be your denominator. Right? Your width, can you see the pointer? Your width is in the numerator, length is in the denominator. Now imagine if the skull length is increasing, that will be your dolichocephalic skulls. All right. So if the length is increasing, if the denominator value is increasing, obviously the overall value will be less, right? Anything in the denominator, if the value is increasing, the overall value will be less. If anything on the top, the numerator value is increasing, your overall value will increase. So the skull length is increasing. This is inversely proportional. Just sorry. Mnemonic I don't really have for that, but just remember this. If the length is increasing, it is inversely proportional to the value. So long skulls will have less value. So both of these, you can at least remember the average value. If you know the average value, anything above and below that you can diagnose if you have the formula in place. So remember the mesocephalic values or mesoprosopic values. This will be your facial index. The width of your face, you're going to measure it with a bow caliper. BOW caliper. You're going to measure the width of your face with a bow caliper and the facial height with a vernier caliper. So what is in the numerator? Height. Width is in the denominator. So if your height is increasing, it is directly proportional to your facial index value. If your width is increasing, facial index is inversely proportional. So there is a difference in the values you can go through later. Just remember these 2 points, it's reverse of each other. What is this condition?
Ectodermal dysplasia.
Yeah, ectodermal dysplasia. You can see there's space here, teeth are not there, conical, hypoplastic, very dry skin. So that is signs of ectodermal dysplasia. Now you have to remember this also, what this is taken directly from Profit. Optimum forces for orthodontic tooth movement. Tipping is 35 to 60. It is the one of the easiest tooth movements along with extrusion. So the easiest movements have 35 to 60. Both tipping and extrusion are 35 to 60. Now amongst these, which is the most difficult to achieve? Which is the tooth movement which is very difficult to achieve and requires the least force? Yeah, intrusion is very difficult to do and that too very safely. In intrusion, what are you doing? You're pushing the teeth in the bone. You're pushing the teeth up. isn't it? So when the teeth is getting pushed up, your apical vessels, your blood supply, nerve supply is at the apex. So that can be damaged. The nerve blood supply to the tooth can be stopped if you apply heavy forces, and the tooth can also become non-vital, and they can be root resorption also. So when you're pushing a hard structure against a hard structure, you need to have very gentle forces so that there will be resorption. Whenever you apply force, there will be bone resorption, right? So apply little force, let the bone resorb, then the tooth can go up. So then apply force again, there will be bone resorption at the top, then the tooth will intrude. At once, if you start applying 100 grams of force, the tooth will smash against the bone on the top. It will become non-vital and intrusion won't happen also. You need to give time for the bone to resorb. So intrusion has the least amount of force. Very gentle forces you need to give. Now, types of forces. Some of you had asked me about. There are two concepts which are given in biology and in profit. Obviously, we will go ahead with profit, whatever it is giving. Now, continuous forces are the ones which are maintained at some appreciable fraction of the original from one patient visit to next visit. Now, imagine I saw one patient today. I'm calling that patient after 1 month. Now, between these two appointments, the overall force, if I give 100 grams, it should not, it will come down to maybe 80 or 50. It will not completely decay down to zero. There will be some force which will be maintained from one appointment to the next. Such forces are called as continuous forces. What are interrupted forces? The force levels decline to zero between the activations. Okay, completely zero between the activations. If you gave 100, when the patient comes to you, the force will be zero. Now, both the continuous and interrupted forces can be produced by fixed appliances that are constantly present. What are your intermittent forces? Force levels decline abruptly to zero intermittently. For example, I gave you a removable appliance. I gave you a labial bow, Hawley's retainer to pull back your incisor. I activated the appliance. You will wear. Then you will remove in the night and you will keep in the glass. So when you're removing the appliance, the force is dramatically reducing. There is no force. There is zero force. So between my one appointment to my next appointment, you will wear the appliance, you'll remove, you'll wear, you'll remove. So abruptly the force can stop, the force can be applied. So such cases where you're removing and placing back, which are dependent on the patient for wearing it, those are called as intermittent forces. Okay, examples are removable orthodontic appliance or elastic wear. You will give patient class 2, class 3 elastic, right? And yeah, so these are the examples. All patient activated appliances such as removable plates, functional appliances, headgear and elastics are intermittent forces. They can ask you question on this. So for example, I will say a patient was given a Frankel appliance. So which category of force does it fall under? Continuous, interrupted or intermittent? What would be the answer? Yeah, it is intermittent. So all functional appliances, headgear, anywhere the patient compliance is used, it will be intermittent. So didn't go the difference between interrupted and intermittent. Can I please explain again? Okay. Now what is interrupted? Okay, so one patient came to me today. Okay, I tell him to come after 1 month. And I have applied 100 grams of force today. Right? Today, which is 16th October, I have applied 100 grams of force. Now, when he sees me after 1 month, when I check the force, it has come down to zero completely. No more force is being applied. So between the appointments, between the activation, the force will drop directly to zero from whatever you have applied. That is called as interrupted force level. Now, what is intermittent? Now, for example, I have given patient a twin block appliance. Okay. So the patient will go home, not twin block. I'll give you another example, headgear appliance. Headgear you have to wear for about 14 hours a day or whatever, right? So the patient will go home, patient will wear the headgear. Force is being applied, isn't it? Now at night or maybe sometime when he doesn't want to wear, he'll remove the headgear, he'll keep it on the side. Is the force being applied now? The force is not being applied. From one appointment to the next, in between the appointments, the patient is not wearing for a few hours a day, right? If he's not wearing it continuously, in 24 hours a day, he might be wearing it for 15 hours. So the remaining few hours, he's not wearing the appliance. So this abruptly, the force is coming to zero intermittently in gaps is called as intermittent forces. So between two appointments, the patient in between is not going to wear the appliance continuously. So for 30 days, he's not wearing that thing continuously for 30 days, 24 hours a day. He'll wear, he'll remove, he'll wear, he'll remove. Whenever he's wearing, force is being applied. Whenever he's removing, force will decline to zero. So intermittently, the force is being applied. Understood that concept? Any patient dependent, it's given here. Intermittent forces are produced by all patient activated appliances. Just remember this point. All patient dependent appliances are intermittent forces. Now this, if you want to remember, you can, if they give this diagram question, you can answer. So Freeman is the one who gave this anchorage value diagram. This will help you in deciding what type of anchorage it is case for extraction, group A, group B, group C, which teeth you need to incorporate and all of that. So in anterior teeth, canines will have the highest value. In posterior teeth, your first molars will have the highest value. Now amongst all of these, which has the highest value, anchorage value, which tooth? In all, the entire dentition, which tooth has the highest anchorage value according to Freeman? Maxillary first molar has 533. Which has the least anchorage value? You already typed it or what before asking? Mandibular central has the least anchorage value of 170. It's the smallest tooth in the mouth, obviously. Now go through this. I have just put it what is skeletal anchorage, what is cortical anchorage. Just go through that. This I'll explain later tomorrow. Now this is just for your sake. This is the friction part of orthodontics. So whenever two surfaces are contacting each other, every surface is irregular, right? No matter if it's polished a little bit, they are irregular. They will have some high points, they'll have some depressions. So these high points are called as asperities. These are the points where the two surfaces will meet and that friction will come. So these are the points where it is going to contact each other. These high points called as asperities. Just for knowing sake, it can come in any situation you don't know. Just for your knowledge sake, I put this. So this is friction related to surface quality of wires. So which wire has the highest friction? Is it stainless steel? Is it niti? Is it beta titanium? Is it cobalt chromium wire? Which has the highest friction? The answer is right in front of your eyes. You read it. Guys, read here. What is this? If the titanium content of an alloy is increasing, its surface reactivity will increase. So titanium to titanium, when they are touching each other, two titanium wires or whatever, yeah, one titanium with any other material, the surface reactive will be more. So friction will be more because of that attraction of titanium, cold melting property and all of that. Beta titanium has 80% titanium. Niti has what? Equiproportion, 50% nickel, 50% titanium. So by virtue of its composition, beta titanium will have more friction than niti. Understood? Read this point. Don't forget this. And this is just an example of anchorage, palatal anchorage and all of that. Segmented arch mechanics was given by whom? Segmented arch mechanics, very important. Yes, Kanchan, you're right. It is Charles Burstone. Very important point. Note this down. Segmented arch mechanics was given by Charles Burstone. Beta titanium wire, TMA wire was given by whom? Oh wait, sorry, I sent it to Kavali only. Beta titanium was given by whom? TMA wire. Guys, come on, answer. AJ Wilcock gave your Australian stainless steel wire. The answer is in the chat only. Burstone only gave that. Burstone and Goldberg. That I'll show you on Google. Just a second. It is Charles Burstone and Goldberg who gave the beta titanium wire. Very important points. You can't forget this. So this is a Crozat appliance for upper and lower arch transverse correction. If an image based question comes, you can answer this. You can take a screenshot or it's there in the chat, right? In the group. Don't select this as a W appliance bolke. See the difference on the occlusal surface. There's one extension. There's fingers. Mandibular expansion plate device is what? Schwarz appliance. Very important. This is mandible, obviously there's an expansion plate there. Mandible removable appliance, or if they give a screw in the lower arch, it will be Schwarz appliance. These are your fixed function appliances. This is Herbst. This one is Forces. This one is Carrier Distalizer. This is a Herbst appliance. This has come in the exam for your seniors. Herbst appliance. They gave an image-based question for this. Ortho mein you'll get a lot of image-based questions. Frankel 3 appliance also came. This is Forces appliance, not Jasper jumper. Jasper jumper will be a tube. Don't get confused. This is a steel rod with a spring, hybrid appliance. Both rigid component will be there and flexible component will be there. Carrier Distalizer will be just this. Easy to identify carrier. This is Herbst, Forces and Carrier. This is Invisalign. First step would be scanning. So whenever you scan, after that you'll get a software where you can see this. That is called as a ClinCheck. Clinician can check. Approver software where you will see the digital impression of the patient to plan your Invisalign treatment. That is called as ClinCheck. Remember this. After that, this is the process. Stereolithographic models will be manufactured according to each stage, right? From your initial malocclusion till your final perfect alignment, they will be staged one by one. All those models will be created stereolithographically, 3D printing, whatever. On that, these Invisalign trays will be manufactured and these will be given to the patient. This question has come, stereolithographic models in Invisalign. Stereolithography. Whatever I am telling is very important and has come before. You see all of this, it's very important. And the material which is used to manufacture Invisalign trays is this. Smart Track material. And who gave Invisalign? I just told half an hour back. Invisalign, yeah, clear path aligners were started by whom? Yeah. Copy pasting or what? Now these are just image based questions. Your father of modern orthodontics gave this E arch or expansion arch. There was one metal tube here, expanded metal tube was there. Then they tied some strings to the tooth. They attached so that everything gets pulled outside and gets aligned. Angle believed in expansion. Angle was a non-extractionist. He did not believe in extracting the teeth. He thought in nature everything is perfect. So if a person has 32 teeth, it should be there in the jaw. Expand and align the teeth. But later it was found that everything was relapsing. So you cannot expand according to your own wish. There's a biological limit. Then this was your expansion appliance and this is your ribbon arch appliance. I'll show what that is. Can you see the bracket of ribbon arch? This, do you see the vertical slot? This is a ribbon bracket, ribbon arch bracket. It will be facing gingivally in ribbon arch appliance. In Beg appliance, Beg brackets are modified ribbon arch brackets. This, if you turn it upside down, then the slot will be facing gingivally. Vertical slot will be facing gingivally in Beg appliance. That is the difference. It is a very important point. Note these points down. It is very important. You cannot find it in the books. Beck bracket is nothing but a modified Fibonacci bracket. I will ask in the exam. Who all will answer, I will see. Now this is edgewise bracket. Edgewise bracket had a horizontal slot. Till now we only saw about vertical slot, right? Edgewise had a vertical slot, horizontal slot. This is a pre-adjusted edgewise bracket. It has a 4 tie-wings. It has all of that. Which is this bracket? Image A. I have sent this in our discussions also before. Let me see who is paying attention. What is that bracket? Image number A here at the bottom. Come on. Should I give you options? Self-ligation will have a shutter that will close on its own. This does not have a shutter. This has tie-wings. This is a tip edge bracket. Yeah, Sunana, you're right. It is a tip edge bracket. Tip edge was given by whom? If I'm not wrong, it was given by Peter C. Kessling. Tip edge bracket, this slot will be cut here at 2 ends. And it will have these extension flanges here. That's a tip edge bracket. It's a combination of straight wire and Begg appliance. Is tip edge. The meaning tip edge means that only. Tip means tipping as in Begg appliance movements, and edge is edgewise movements. It has the features of both Begg appliance and edgewise appliance. The teeth will tip before, then later they will go with the edgewise appliance. It's very difficult to explain in the short class. But anyways, if you have doubts, you can ask me personally. Now go through these. I'm not explaining again. Just remember that your modern edgewise appliance or your pre-adjusted edgewise appliance have a 22-28 slot. This is very frequently asked. 22-28 slot. Your modern brackets, whatever you're using now. Where is the chat? It can be written like this. Edgewise slot is this. This also can be used, or 18-22 slot also. Or it can be written like this also. 022, 028 slot. Ribbon arch mein they used to use gold wire, it seems. These are your self-ligating brackets. Can you see the shutter in front of the bracket? It will self-close. You don't need any elastic modules. You don't need ligature, anything. Directly the shutter will close the wire and secure it in place. So these are very popular nowadays. Damon brackets, smart clip, ceramic self-ligating brackets. The future of orthodontics is Invisalign and self-ligating. This is another bracket system, insignia system. This is each bracket is customized according to the patient's anatomy. The patient labial surface, it is trimmed, CAD/CAM manufactured brackets, insignia. And then on the software only, you will decide where to place the brackets. You will get these jigs. I place these jigs and automatically I know where I can bond the bracket. I just have to place composite at the back after etching and it will bond. So these are known as customized brackets, patient prescription brackets, insignia system. This is robotic wire bending. This is lingual appliance, mushroom shaped arch wires. Lingual appliance was introduced by whom? Oh wait, I was sending the slot sizes to Sunana. (1828 or 1822 flooding? Yeah, Craven Curse or that Kinya Fujita fellow. Different places, these two people had started this lingual appliance. Not that popular, but okay. Now these are your tiebacks. How many slides are remaining? Wait, let me check. Okay, I'll take a class tomorrow. I don't want to go beyond 1 hour. Tomorrow I will discuss these remaining 13 slides and then we will discuss 2019 paper if possible with the explanation part. I think for today this is enough. We'll have few sessions like this so that we can finish without consuming a lot of time every day. All right. Any doubts you have, please ask immediately before I end the session. Anything you didn't understand in today's class? You understood everything? Okay, fine. Chalo, I'll see you in the classroom. The wagon wheel effect and all of that I will show you tomorrow.